All right, gang, welcome back. Hey, today we are going to get into some rhythmic phrasing, and it's going to be just a kind of a starter or a primer program for, things to think about when you're soloing or improvising or even playing rhythm guitar. Anything that relates to playing the guitar, really, when you think about it, rhythm is so important. Now, I'm certainly not going to force everybody to, learn how to sight read or anything, but I think it is important to at least be able to sight read rhythms, at least for these exercises, and I just think it's a great thing to do anyway. So if you don't sight read, don't feel intimidated. I'm going to kind of go through each rhythm and show you how we put them together and show you how you can kind of diversify your rhythmic phrasing, just to start off with just simple quarter notes and eighth notes, nothing too special. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so the first thing you see here is just the top of the page here where I have my rhythmic phrases, and I just went through some of the more straight feeling things, not triplets or anything like that, but just kind of going in a hierarchy of whole notes, going into half notes, and so on and so forth. So let me explain quickly what these mean if you don't know already. So a whole note, we're playing in 4/4, so this is our time signature right here, and what that means is the quarter note gets the pulse or the beat, and there's 4 quarter notes in each measure. So that visually would look something like this. These are quarter notes, and there's 4 of them in each measure. Of course, you can combine these quarter notes together to make half notes and whole notes. So a whole note would basically take up the whole measure. It would just play one note, but the duration of that note would take up the whole measure. Now, half notes would basically split the measure in 2. All right, and then quarter notes, you would play a note for each pulse of the beat, or the metronome, so to speak. Then eighth notes, what that does is it slices each of these quarter notes in 2. So it's kind of like double time quarter notes. And then we would have basically 16th notes, which is like double time eighth notes, right? So 4 notes per beat. Okay, so I'm working right around 90 beats per minute. Don't feel like you have to kind of go at this tempo. All right, so I got a little drum beat going here. I like practicing the drum beats better than metronomes. Sometimes I've used metronomes, but sometimes drum beats can just be fun. So if I was going to play a C major scale using whole notes, well, it would take me a little while because each one of these whole notes is going to last a whole measure. So here's our measure: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll stop there. It gets a little boring, but whole notes are very important, especially for those longer duration notes, right? Let's do half notes now. So I'm just going to count 1, 2 for one half note, and then 3, 4 for the other one. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, quarter notes is going to be one note on each beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Simple, all right? Eighth notes are going to be double time. That's going to be 2 notes on each beat. So we'd have. All right. And then 16th notes are going to be double time that. So you might want to start with just one note and feel what that feels like. 1 E into 2 E into 3 E into 4. Something like that, okay? I'm going to guess that you guys are somewhat familiar with these. Okay, for each one of those, there is the equivalent rest. So let's take a quick peek at that. And that's the next thing down on the list here, is the equivalent rest that goes with it. Okay, this is very important because rest can kind of change a phrase. You know, if you have a note, a half note, that is played for 2 beats. You could also play a quarter note with a quarter note rest. It's the same amount of time, but it's going to sound different. So that's why it's important to understand the equivalent rests that go along with each one of these. So here's an example. And, you know, a lot of times people describe certain techniques we play on the guitar to describe a sound. Sometimes that's correct. Like, for example, legato. A lot of people will equate legato to a certain technique, you know, like flowing in, you know, like hammer-ons and pull-offs and notes kind of flowing into each other. It's kind of right, but basically what it means is just, you know, longer notes and shorter notes. So, you know, it's how you're playing the notes too. So, like for my first example here, this is basically the same phrase. In other words, the accents are on the same place on the beat. So it's an accent on beat 1 here. And with this whole note, it carries for 2 beats. And then we have another accent on beat 3 and another accent on beat 4. So this is the same thing. There's an accent on beat 1, but now we're going to stop on beat 2 as a rest, and then accents on beats 3 and 4. Same thing here. Now beats 3 and 4 are a little shorter because they're 8th notes, and now everything is 8th notes. So let me just play this real quick, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, this is like measure 11 right here. I'm just going to play one note so you can hear the difference of what this sounds like. Here's the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now measure 12, the accents are the same except for we have a rest on beat 2. So that would sound like this, 3, 4. Here's the first one again, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the second one. Okay, now measure number 13 here is accents are in the same place, but now these notes, these quarter notes, have been turned into 8th notes with an 8th note rest. So those are going to be a little more staccato. So here's measure 13, 2, 3, 4. And then measure 14, they're all just short 8th notes, 3, 4. Okay, I think you get the idea. Okay, so those rests are very important, right? They kind of dictate, you know, how long a note's going to be. And this is one thing that you need to pay attention to. This is one of the small details. I think it kind of separates more experienced players from less experienced players, is that more experienced players are more aware of the duration of the notes, okay? And that goes a lot for playing rhythm guitar with chords. If I'm recording or, you know, anything really, I try to hold a chord out until I can't possibly hold it anymore, or I'm not going to make it to the next chord. So I want those chords to, you know, depending on the song or whatever, I want them to flow into each other. I don't want to stop early and create a gap there that's going to create a little hiccup in the music. So I'm aware of note durations whenever I'm playing. And so that little exercise there, or that little, it just kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. The difference of something could be phrased the same as far as where the accents are. Like in that one, the accent was on beat 1, 3, and 4, okay? But, you know, depending if they're whole half notes or quarter notes or 8th notes with rests after them, it's going to feel different. It's going to change the phrasing of it, okay? So it's not just about what note you play, it's about what note you don't play. That's how the saying goes, right? Okay. All right, so let's jump over to the first example here. So with the first example, here is a basically kind of the same thing. I just added an 8th note rhythm into the equation. So for measure number 15 there, again, I'm just going to play one note for now. It's just a C note here. If I play the first note as a half note, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay, so there's no beat 2 there, right? Now on the next one, basically all I did was I just put a quarter note here and a rest on beat 2. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay. Now on measure 17, on the next one, I made beat 3 an eighth note instead of a quarter note, so that's going to be a little bit shorter. So it's going to sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay, and then the next one, again, it's the same phrase. The accents are still the same. Now they're all eighth notes, which makes them shorter. So that will sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay, so that's all I'm doing here with example 1 is I'm just illustrating how kind of the same accents, just the same kind of thing I did here. Okay. Now, in example 2, what I did here is I just started flipping where this half note, this 2-beat duration, it was on beat 1 before, now it's on beat 2. Okay, so measure number 19 will sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Okay, the next measure, measure 20, I'm just making that half note a quarter note with a quarter note rest. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Okay, so let's say I played example 2, measure 19 as a scale. So it'd sound like this. Something like that, just a C major scale. Now I'll play the next measure. It's basically the same rhythm, but the beat 2 is shorter, so it's going to go. Now the next measure, I made beat 2 an eighth note, so that's going to be a little bit shorter. And then the last one is all just eighth notes, more staccato. Okay, so again, that's just another similar example as to this one. And then example 3 is also kind of the same thing, except for I moved the longer duration note over to beat number 3 and 4 here, okay? So the first measure would sound like this. Okay, now measure 24, basically the same thing, except for I have a quarter note rest on beat 4. So that would sound like this: 1, 2, and 3. Okay, measure 25, again, the same accents, but exactly, now beat 3 is an eighth note, so it's going to be a little bit shorter. All right, and then the next one are all eighth notes. Okay, so this exercise is meant to get you aware of note duration. So these first 3 exercises here, that's what I'm doing here. So I'm basically taking the same rhythm and playing as more legato or making the notes longer, and then eventually making the note shorter as I move to the right. This is a really good thing to be conscious of. This is a great tool for when you're improvising. You can you know, tell a lot more story if you have a lot more diversity in your playing. You know, you can play shorter notes and longer notes. You could play the same phrase. One version of it is with longer notes. The next version is with some version of shorter notes, or vice versa. There's just so many ways to diversify this. And this, trust me, this is just scratching the surface. I'm just kind of introducing the concept to you. So that's what I wanted to illustrate there with those first three examples. So my suggestion would be is maybe just put on a metronome and just play a simple scale. It could be even a pentatonic scale, or just something that you're really familiar with, so you don't have to think about the scale or what notes you're playing. Your hands know the pattern, and then try to incorporate different versions of these rhythms, and paying attention to note duration. That's really the thing. Okay, so the next exercises that I have here, you'll see they are pretty similar, except for what I'm doing is I started out with example number 4 here, and I have 2 quarter notes in a measure and 2 sets of eighth notes in a measure, and I'm just moving them around. That's the first exercise here, is I'm just moving them around. So what you want to do is, you see there's a double bar at the end of each one of these. So each one of these is their own little practice phrase. So what you might want to do is just start off by playing the note with just one note, the rhythm with one note. So the first measure would be 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, and this is another reason why I kind of like to use a drum beat, because some of these rhythms kind of twist around back on themselves with a metronome. With a groove, it kind of keeps it similar. So let's see what we got here. All right, I got a little drum. Okay, so here's the first one. It's just that's the phrase I'm using, okay? Now you can experiment with note duration too. You could play something like so I'm kind of making beat 1 shorter, so to speak, right? Like maybe an eighth note with a rest. Okay, measure 28. Again, maybe you want to just try these first with just one note. So this would be 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And once you kind of internalize it, then play it up and down the scale. 2, 3, 4. Okay, then you might want to experiment using the same rhythm, maybe making some of the quarter notes a little shorter or more staccato. So something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I was kind of randomizing it there, but that's kind of the point. I want to just kind of have command of that. All right, measure number 29. I'll just play it with one note. It's 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3. Something like that. Again, I can maybe make some of those quarter notes a little more staccato. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of making the quarter notes feel a little bit more like eighth notes. Kind of gets me a little bit different feel of the same phrase. So kind of experiment with that as you're practicing some of these different phrases. All right, the next one note is something like this. 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, 3, 4, and. Okay, now you can maybe make some of the quarter notes a little more staccato-y. 3, 4. Something like that. And then the next one is 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So that would be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now I'm going to experiment with making some of the notes a little bit shorter. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Something like that. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to see, and now I know a lot of you guys in my Patreon can already play your butts off, so this might seem a little boring, like, hey man, I want to do some Van Halen licks. But I can't really express to you enough how important this is, just as an overall general musician. As you're practicing this, you can think about note duration. You can change a quarter note into an eighth note just in your head. Maybe you're just using the visual aid as to trying to get the basic, you know, where the rhythmic subdivisions are, but then you can make notes a little shorter, change the quarter notes in your head to eighth notes and play them shorter and experiment with that. The next exercise I have is basically taking the same rhythms and moving off of the downbeats. So let's take a quick peek at that. Okay, so exercise number 5 here. This is basically, if you look right above it, it's the same thing as in exercise number 4, measure 27, 32. It's the same rhythm except for I have a quarter note rest on beat 1. Okay, so this is a really great exercise, and each one of them are like that. I've just went through each one of these, and if the downbeat was a quarter note, I put a quarter note rest. Like on this one, it's an eighth note, so I put an eighth note rest. So you're going to start on the end of 1 on this one. Okay, these are all separate little exercises here. So this exercise starts to get you, starts to kind of loosen that attachment to beat number 1, which is very common when you start playing or you start practicing scales and stuff. You put a metronome on and it's kind of like 1, 2, and you always kind of start on 1. And what it can do is really make your playing very predictable. So let's walk through these real quick. Okay, so I switched over to a metronome because the drum beat was getting a little complex. There was some fills and stuff, and I want to just really focus. So again, what you might want to do is just start with one note. I'm just kind of starting with the C note here. And count yourself in, and this is going to be measure 32 right here, and we're not going to play beat 1. We're going to come on 2 and 3, 4 and 2 and 3, 4 and. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. Okay, once you got it with one note, now see if you can play that C major scale with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and maybe you could even do it, mess around or experiment with that quarter note if you want to make that shorter, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on and so forth. All right, let's look at the next one. Again, we're getting off beat number 1. We're just mirroring the rhythm that happened above it. So the first note was a quarter note, so we're going to put a quarter note rest there. Again, I'm going to start with one note. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I got it. Now I'm going to play that C major scale. 3, 4. with that. All right, let's look at exercise 34. All right, now 34, mirroring what happened here in 29. So the first note is an eighth note. So now we have an eighth note rest, and we're going to start on the end of one. This is a little bit trickier, so let's do it with one note first. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Okay, now I'm going to try to play the scale. 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. All right, let's look at measure number 35. This is similar, just shifted around a little bit different. All right, let's play it with one note. 2, 3, 4, 1. And 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, and. All right, now let's play with the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and then number 36, same exercise. Let's do it with one note first. Again, this is just mirroring what's above it, but putting an eighth note rest on beat number 1. Let's try it with one note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 2 and 3, 4. All right, let's put it through the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, let's keep moving. So I hope the metronome doesn't throw you off here. Try to talk over it here because I just want to move along quickly. But see, what I've done is I've taken the same thing from exercise 4. I've taken that rhythm. On the exercise 5, I'm taking out beat 1. And exercise 6, I'm taking out beat 2. So now we would have, if we look at this one, where the beat 2 is an eighth note in this one. So I'm going to put an eighth note rest there. Let's do it with one note first. 2, 3, 4, 1, rest, and 3, 4, and 1. Okay, I think we got it. Let's put it through the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and I'm going to do a couple more, but I think you're starting to get the drift here, right? Let's do number 38. That's actually very similar. Let's try one that has a quarter note rest on beat 2. How about measure 39 here? Let's play it with one note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and rest, 3 and 4, 1 and rest, 3 and 4. All right, let's try to play the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now exercise 7 is the same thing, except for I put the rests on beat 3. Okay, so I think you see where this is going. This is all the exercises I want to give you in this particular video. It is, first of all, just a quick review. I wanted to show you what these different rhythmic subdivisions feel like, how they work, how they look. and then their correlating rests, what they visually look like for each one of them. And then this is an example of how the rhythmic hits can be in the same place, but depending on the duration of the notes, it can have a different sound, more legato or more staccato. Okay, and then of course we can start entering this into our phrasing, and basically I'm just shifting eighth notes around here, but then in exercise 5, I'm eliminating beat 1, playing the same rhythm, but eliminating beat 1. Exercise 6, I'm playing the same rhythm as 4, but eliminating beat 2. Exercise 7, again, is the same rhythm as exercise 4, but I'm eliminating beat number 3, and then beat number 4. Okay, so my suggestion is to play each of those rhythms separately. Don't think of it as like you're going to read the whole thing down. Just use each one of those as a little cell, as I like to call them, and practice your scales with some of those. Of course, I'm just doing it 90 beats per minute or so. So, this is not about speed. This is really about developing, your ability to know and be able to feel note duration, how long a note should last, and what the impact of it is, if it's longer, if it's shorter. That's a big deal here in this particular exercise, to me anyway. The next part of it is taking a rhythm and just injecting different rests to get off the downbeats of things. And of course, you can always bake in, if you see a quarter note on there, you could always play it as an eighth note. Do you know what I mean? So you don't feel like just because it visually is a quarter note, you can always staccato it if you want, make it shorter. And that changes it just a little bit. All right, so you can see that this is really a vast topic. This is one of the reasons why I sometimes become reluctant to get into this with people, because it's so vast. And I haven't really found any exact right or wrong way to do it, so to speak. I think this is a pretty good method, the way that I'm kind of looking at it now. I'm trying to keep it simple with just kind of, eighth notes and quarter notes and their correlating rests. Of course, you can always speed the tempo up, you know what I mean, if you want to make it more challenging. If you want to kind of like start slow, start with one note, figure out the rhythm, maybe play a sound, a scale or something like that with it. And then if you want to speed it up to make it more challenging, great. Ultimately, what you'd like to do eventually down the road is maybe start to combine some of these measures together, so you have more like a 2-bar phrase rather than just a 1-bar phrase. But for now, let's just focus on this. Let me know what you think. I don't want to try to jam sight reading down your throat, but I don't think this is too difficult, and I think probably most of my students in here know how to read this anyway. So it's good. So let's get you thinking a little bit different. Get you to quit thinking about technique so much, like, oh, how do I sweep? How do I tap? How do I alternate pick at 300 miles an hour? That's cool, but man, you can make a lot of music and say a lot of things with simple things, and it seems simple, but you'll see it's not really. It really diversifies your phrasing and makes you a more interesting player. So, all right, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time around. Cheers.